Hi everyone, welcome to MSRT Live's new episode. Today we have a very special guest. Microsoft AI MVP Alicia Moniz is with us today. Alicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be participating.
We are so excited as well. So can you please tell me a little bit about yourself, your current role at your company, your community activities?
Yeah, thank you. So currently I am the analytics lead in the Houston studio for Avanade, and Avanade is a Microsoft partner. We're actually partially owned by Microsoft and partially owned by Accenture. So we're one of the partners that shares Azure with the world. So I love it that I'm able to work so closely with the Microsoft products. So I'm also a Microsoft AI MVP, and as part of my community activities, I do get to go to numerous local and international events where I get to share the latest and greatest with Microsoft and specifically AI. And it's great to be able to share what I'm passionate about. So you may see me at a SQL Saturday or a Data Platform Summit was an event that I went to last year. So my background is I do have extensive data warehousing and analytics experience. And for most of these Azure projects, 80% of the project ends up being a data ingestion question as far as, how do we build that pipeline to get our data into the cloud, and how do we get additional insights out of our data? And then when you partner with the application teams, it's how do we get more readily available, actionable insights out of our data. And that's really what these cognitive services features allow us to do. And I'm happy to share and speak on those topics.
Okay, so what does AI actually mean? There are different things like AI, machine learning, deep learning, and this is always confused.
Yeah, so it's really kind of a subset of activities. So artificial intelligence is generally the ability to code a machine to do a task. So many of us do that already with our if then else statements and or case statements. And what it is it's taking a defined rules engine. So you'll hear artificial intelligence spoken of a lot with game engines, because you're feeding in a predefined set of rules to the software, and you're able to kind of dictate what the results would be. And the general intent is that these would be the same results that a human would have if we were faced with the same questions. So when you look at, so that's artificial intelligence, is building in the ability, almost the ability to reason into a machine. Now, when you look at machine learning takes it one step further, where you're able to add in the rules, but after adding in the rules, you're able to alter the data set, and the machine is then on its own able to learn and continue to make decisions. So this would be taking a data set, and you'll see when we look at building our model today, we're going to go ahead and build a custom vision model. But with the current cognitive services APIs, we can take a data set, we can feed it into the cognitive services. So this is our group of pictures, and then we're able to determine an outcome. Now, we can feed in additional pictures with additional clarity, with additional rules, and we can alter the outcome and the decisions that are being made by the model. And that's what machine learning is. Now, deep learning is going to be just a step deeper, and it usually requires a more intensive data set, definitely more compute, and usually the deep learning is performed off of blob type or image type, where you're doing analysis not at the image level, but down to the pixel level.
Okay, thank you. As a developer, do I need to know Python or any other data science stuff to start coding with an AI project?
Yeah, so it really depends on your tool. And so Python and R are definitely the leaders in as far as software that's being utilized and adopted by users looking to integrate AI into their applications. But part of the benefits of the Microsoft Cognitive Services APIs is that they abstract away a lot of that machine learning, where Microsoft has built the model out, and they've defined a set of expected outcomes, and they've packaged it into an API model, which you can then communicate with using your standard C# or JavaScript or Java. So you can even integrate with these APIs within Power BI. So when you're looking at your users, you're looking at your programmers, and you're looking at your analysts, Microsoft is really making it easy for people to leverage machine learning without having to understand how to build the underlying machine learning models.
Okay, so how much computing power do I need to run an AI application? And how Azure can help me for that?
Yeah, definitely. So the cognitive services APIs are all hosted on Microsoft Compute. So what you end up paying for is the analysis at the transaction level. So you're not paying for compute at all. So a lot of the more traditional data science packages, what you are looking at is standing up these big systems, having to store your own data sets, right? So you're looking at huge volumes of data. And then on top of that, to process all that data, huge amounts of compute. So the cognitive services, because they are pre-trained, you're not responsible for as much of that construction, and you actually benefit from a lot of the learnings that are already built into the models. So what we'll be talking about today is how to interact with those APIs, and you'll see that it's very easy for people with less intensive data science skills to get similar results that you can leverage a lot quicker than building the model from the ground up.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about the Face API, but what other services that cognitive services provide us?
Oh, that is an excellent question, and that is where we are going to get started in the demo, actually. So I'm happy to talk about that.
Okay. So let's start then.
Okay. Do you want me to start with the presentation, or do you want to talk about it first? Okay. So
okay.
I actually like to start everybody off with the AI demos page. And this is a question that many of us have, and this is a question that many of the people that we work with have, is what is AI? And in addition to, how can we start utilizing it in our applications, and how can we start talking and having that conversation with different people in our organization so that they can start thinking about the functionality and building it into our roadmaps for our software and our technology plans. So the AI demos page is fantastic because it provides that interface and gateway into that access to the Microsoft APIs. So the most common uses of machine learning are going to be text, vision, and speech analytics. And these are the APIs that have been available the longest on the Microsoft Cognitive Services suite. So what we can do is we can go ahead and jump into AI demos, and we can do a quick test. And we noticed that the sentiment analysis pops up. So sentiment analysis is probably the most widely used application of AI for text. And when you look at how the Microsoft Cognitive Services for Text model works, we noticed a couple of things. We're able to go ahead and pull out not only the sentiment, but we can go ahead and pull out key phrases and perform entity linking. So what is entity linking? So I'm from Hawaii. My family absolutely loves Hawaii. So we can go ahead and click on Hawaii, and it has identified Hawaii as a location and linked to the Wikipedia page for Hawaii. So a fun fact is they did use the Wikipedia as a source for building and training the text analytics machine learning model. So what does that mean? That means that we're going to have a high level of true positives for words, phrases, and texts and images that show up in Wikipedia when we're using those key phrases, texts, and images against our model for predictions. So what that says is when you're building out your model, that really speaks to why we want to have a good variety as well as a good representation of your true use case, so that when we're looking at the results of your model, the results are applicable to your scenario. So another one that I want to touch on is the computer vision. And you'll see that the core functionalities of the computer vision are you can go ahead and analyze and describe images. So what we're doing is we're pulling tags against the image that represent what the model is seeing within the image. And then we have some text here for a description. And what really excites me is that this is kind of leveraging some of the text analytics that Microsoft is making available through the text API. So you can see that as advances are made in each of the APIs, we're able to leverage the learnings within the other APIs. Another thing to note is the racy and adult content confidence level. And this really speaks to kind of the ethics that's going into AI and the strong focus on having that ability to kind of be more ethical about what we're posting online. So major usages for the machine learning models are, like right now, labeling and classification. And this is, I think we've gone through this time period where we've been generating and collecting these huge amounts of data. So we've been, from the advent of, emails to cell phones where everybody's taking pictures. And so the amount of electronic data that we've been generating and that organizations collect has been growing exponentially over the years. And I think our abilities as humans just hasn't been able to keep up with our ability to process everything. I mean, how many emails do you have in a day that you see it come across and you see the headline, but you don't have a chance to read through the entire email? So looking forward, the use cases for machine learning is it's really a great way for us to do some high level processing through that 80% of data that can be automated, and leaving that 20% of data for our knowledge workers so that they can go through and do the hands-on or the phone calls or the emails to follow up on those items that can't be automatically processed. And that's something that I'm seeing in many of our projects. So another capability of the computer vision API is we can go ahead and pull out text and imagery. So there are new forms processing capabilities in the cognitive services APIs, and there's going to be a lot of automation as far as forms processing coming down the pipe. We can read handwriting and imagery, and again, forms processing capabilities. And the last is kind of funny, it's recognize celebrities and landmarks. And so we have a picture of Satya here with 100% confidence. And when you look at the capability of the API, the capability isn't recognize Alicia Moniz and Mert. You know, it's recognize a celebrity because this is supervised learning and there's a fixed set of data for a fixed set of people that have been provided to the machine learning model. And as a result, the model is able to predict within a certain range with a certain degree of confidence that this is that celebrity or this is that landmark. So I'm pretty sure somebody is aggregating, you know, pictures of all of us, right? So, but if you're looking at a smaller subset of data, and this is why privacy concerns are showing up with a lot of these custom vision use cases, and is, you know, should somebody have the right to collect your image? And should they have a right to analyze your face when you walk into the store or when you walk into the airport? And where are they storing that location, that data? So if it's your employer, like how long should they be able to store that? Is it ethical for them to store that? So these are a lot of the questions that come up when you're building these projects, specifically associated to individuals and privacy. So when you're talking to clients or you're thinking about creating these projects, it's really important to talk about and to think about, well, where are you obtaining the images from? And where are you storing the images? And what controls are in place for that data, and what level of control are you giving the person being assessed as far as their ability to be asked to be removed from either your data set or your application. So that's a little bit about the computer vision API. And
may I ask you a question before you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Can you move down a little bit? Your page. There is an option to try another image. So if I use another celebrity's image, does it use a search engine like Bing to match the image, or there is a data set in the Azure data center?
So this is built against existing data set. So I think it would depend, right? It would depend on if the coders thought your celebrity was a true celebrity, right? So it's not a finite list. Did you have somebody that you'd like to try?
You can try anybody you want.
Oh yeah, we can try somebody.
Yeah.
Oh no, give me a name. So somebody who would be famous to you.
Famous to me, and Robert Downey Jr.
Okay, so Robert Downey Jr. And we'll go to images. Let me just save it in my downloads. And I don't know if I can do it from here. Okay, so you can't do it from here, but I do have an API configured. So when I get into that page, let's try it there.
Okay.
Okay. But this page is piped against these 4 images. So I think if you go to the computer vision page, I think it might let you do it there. Okay. Let's try to get a URL. Okay. And let's see. So this isn't giving us the celebrity results. So this is giving us the tagging results. It's not giving us the celebrity results. So you can see it's giving, oh no, here you go.
Yes.
Look at that. Robert Downey Jr. wearing a suit and a tie with a confidence level of 0.99%. So yes, he is a celebrity according to the programmers. And so what's interesting is the computer vision API, they'll actually give you coordinates, and there are many projects where like with the drones and the capabilities of streaming video, right? You can use the coordinates to calculate like distance relative to other objects. And so for drone activity, you can actually guide based on the vision results. And it's identified this face in the front and 2 possible faces in the back. And for some reason, it really likes his tie. So we've got coordinates relative to the top left of the image, tags coming out, description. So we've got our classifications as far as adult content. This is not a racy pick. He's kind of a racy fella though. So and so they make it really easy to interact with the services. So this is the computer vision page on Cognitive Services, and you can interact with most of the APIs via their individual pages as well. I myself, I do like AI demos because it has everything on one page, and usually when I have one of our developers or one of our sales guys or account leads and they have questions, I can pop that page open no matter whose computer I'm at and show them a couple of things without opening up any code or downloading any software. And so, so when we look at functionality, this is a good resource to say, hey, what does Microsoft's AI do? Right. So the Microsoft AI Cognitive Services they're going to be APIs with a defined set of functionality. So you can go ahead and go to the documentation. And we can go to the API reference. And the API reference will tell us exactly what capabilities we can utilize when communicating with the API. So I'm back at the Cognitive Services main page. I'm going to documentation, computer vision, reference. So we're at the computer vision API page, and you can see there's post commands, there's read commands. Oops, I lost it. 1 second. We'll start with computer vision and reference. So you can see that there's multiple operations that you can perform to pass information over to the API as well as receive it back. So there's also the different locations that are available. So because the APIs are services that are hosted by Microsoft, they're not readily available in every location. So generally, I stick to the more the older locations, because those are generally the locations that the cognitive services are rolled out to first. So I would recommend just a quick check to make sure that your region has the APIs available. The reference will give a quick what does the API call do? What parameters does it take? So usually they will either accept an image to be uploaded or a URL specified. And what's really neat here is they actually do let you simulate calls via this page to the API. So once you've set up your API and you have an endpoint to communicate with, you can actually use this page to pass your parameters. So these are the different parameters that this call can take, along with your subscription key code, and you can use this page to interact with your API as you would an application. So that's the testing your application part. So we're going through some of the parameters, and a lot of these things look familiar to us. So adult brands, categories, description, tags. These were all the things that we saw when we took a quick look at Robert Downey Jr.'s face. And then we have our header types, which is important for when we communicate with the API. And then we had the question about language. Well, what language can I use to code and communicate with these APIs? So this is going to be an example of the JSON payload that's returned back via the API call. So at the bottom of each of the reference pages is an example of how to, what the minimal code is required to interact with the API. And you can see that the amount of code is very, very minimal, very few lines. So what we start out with is, so this is Python 2.7. So I probably would update this to 3.6. But we have our imports. We're going to be passing JSON content. So the header type there is set to application JSON, and then we have our subscription key. So once we've created our cognitive services API and associated that with our subscription, we can go ahead and enter in that information here for when we're making the connection. So parameters for this API call, we're just pulling categories. And then we're going to, so this is kind of the key here is depending on what region you've created your cognitive services in, this is going to be the beginning of your path to the URL. And then if you're using vision, text, or language speech, that will affect the bottom half of your URL. So this really is a good place to go to get the absolute correct path for your code. And then you can go ahead and paste in the body of your message there. And sorry, this is 3.2 down here. So the amount of code that we're doing is actually just this little bit up here. But the reason why the code looks so minimal is because we're not doing any coding, we're not building any of the machine learning module. What it is we're interacting with the API that's already sitting and hosted by Microsoft. So if we put all the pieces together,
so
then
can we use a
yes.
custom data set? Or do I have to use the Microsoft datasets?
So it depends on if you're doing text or if you're doing vision. So with vision, you can actually build your own model. So we can go to customvision.ai. And I'll open something up for you. But we can go ahead and upload our own images and perform our own tagging. So if we could upload images of you and we could have a Alicia versus Mert indicator. And I would tag my pictures Alicia, and I would tag your pictures with Mert. And we could go ahead and publish that. And then we could have like face tracking software or something silly that way, right? And this project, I just have pictures of my daughter's puppy because she gave me permission to use his pictures, right? And pictures of her toys. And again, I was expressly provided permission to take these pictures by my daughter. So you can upload, it takes a minimum of 15 images, and you can have a classifier, and this whole process will take, I think it takes maybe like 10 to 15 minutes, because basically you do a bulk upload and a tag for one case, and then a bulk upload and a tag for another case. So if you're wanting to build something more intensive, then you can export your model. Hold on a second. Let me show you the project settings. Okay. So when we look at the project settings, we see that the caps are very, very high. So you can actually, I can associate up to 500 tags, and I can upload up to 100,000 images. So this is on the SO tier. So there's a free tier below that where I believe it's I probably should pull that up for you so to give you the right information. But even at the free level, there's quite a bit of images, and so you can build your data set, and this is outside of computer vision. So when you're looking at the difference between Microsoft's computer vision versus Microsoft's custom vision, that's exactly when you would want to use the custom vision, is when you have your own data set and you're looking for that specific case. The computer vision is more for labeling and classification, where the underlying data set used to build the model is generic enough where it's going to cover the majority of our cases. But moving forward, AI is like, there's going to be so much opportunity for us to make AI more relatable and relevant based on the actual domain. So take acronyms. So in the healthcare industry, there may be different acronyms than in the IT field. And, SAP users might have different acronyms than SQL Server users. So when you look at having a more applicable AI, it's really going to come down to how aligned is your underlying data set compared to the outcome you're trying to predict against. Does that make sense? So I see a lot of customization coming out in the future that's tied to a more relevant data set. So we can go ahead and put together all the pieces. And so how do we code and make the call to the Cognitive Services API? So I do have an example of communicating with the FACE API, and I'm in Jupyter Notebooks. So for those of you who haven't used Jupyter Notebooks before, Jupyter Notebooks is, well, Azure Notebooks is Jupyter Notebooks on Azure. So what it is it's hosted on Azure Compute, and the code is on Azure Storage, and it's a free resource for you to use. So again, I like to be able to jump into my code no matter where I'm at without having to install any drivers. Anybody who's worked with Python knows you do have to install those libraries, and it's a non-Windows process. So, sometimes you do have to do some restarting and all that good stuff. And there might be resource conflicts. So I like to use Jupyter Notebooks. You might see that the markdown text, and it might look very similar to new capabilities in Azure Data Studio. And yes, this is all about being able to intermix that code and markup language, right? So what does the FACE API do? We had gone over to the API reference page for the computer vision model, and I've gone ahead and kind of pasted some of the FACE capabilities out here. So what we're able to do is we're able to identify and label a face out of a group of faces. So that gives us an ID. We're able to build the model. We're able to construct the rectangle around the face. And there's up to 27 points of references that they're able to pull out of an individual face. So we've already seen the age capabilities with Robert Downey Jr., and I'm not sure about how accurate that number was. It might have been a little optimistic, but it definitely is. It depends on how much of a. So I admit I've checked the age predictor, and it depends on how many wrinkles I think it sees. So if I smile and you can see the wrinkles in my eyes and the wrinkles in my cheeks, then it absolutely adds years. So, but when you look at kind of the assumptions that people make, it kind of makes me wonder, isn't it just as equally inaccurate as the human eye is, right? So anyway, so we can go ahead and pull out male or female. There's different range indicators. So smile, facial hair, you're getting more kind of into the weeds with roll, yaw, and pitch angles for face direction. And again, some of these directional are really, like, you look at the applications and like the future applications and the integration between predictions on images based on some of these AV/AR capabilities. And again, now we're back in that space where we're capable of collecting the data for future predictions. So maybe we're not able to have the tech, but at least we can start collecting the data so that we can build the prediction off of that level of detail, right? So I think that's really interesting. We can call out if there's glasses, emotions, hair, makeup, and accessories. So one of the things I did, so I'm in Python 3.6, and I can go ahead and switch between Python versions when I open and close notebooks, and there's no change to my laptop, which is fantastic for me, which is why I use the Azure Notebooks. I have my subscription key here. I have the request header. I have some parameters, and the question I'm going to ask is not only gender, but also facial hair. And what we're going to do is we're doing kind of like a gender analysis for a group of speakers, right? So how many of the speakers are male and how many of the speakers are female? And I think that in a lot of events where we have these conversations about how do we be more inclusive and diverse, and I think part of that conversation is evaluating, because I'm a data guy, right? And part of that conversation is, well, how well have we been doing in the past? And how do we calculate that? Because there isn't a lot of events where people ask me to fill in a checkbox that says, you know, I'm female versus male, right? So how do we start collecting that data using from the past, using things that are available to us? So I propose, you know, using some of these speaker pictures or speaker group pictures just to get an approximate kind of idea of where we've been so that we can work towards, you know, being a little bit more diverse and inclusive in the future. So it's kind of interesting because I wasn't trusting just the gender. So I do have facial hair in there because I figured that if you could wear your hair a different length, but you were less likely, I thought, to grow a beard and a mustache if you were female. So I thought if I had the both of them, then that would give me a kind of a good gauge to measure against, right? So I do have my picture in here, and the Azure Notebooks is great because it does let me not only upload my code, but it also lets me upload my dependencies. Sorry, it displays it very oddly. So I'll show you the picture here. So there's 3 of us for my event, and I absolutely do have permission to use this photo in presentations and in articles. So this is a friend of mine, Ryan Durbin. Billy York is also Microsoft MVP, and Jim Reed is a CSA with Microsoft. He's a cloud solution architect here in Houston. So I see them at many local events. And then we have our little bit of code. So my body is simply, I'm passing the JPEG and the JPEG contents, and I'm passing it to my API, my crowd classification API. The back of my URL is going to go specifically to this face directory. And then I'll go ahead and submit my parameters and body here. So I can go ahead and run that piece of code. Okay, and it did take a little bit of time to come back. I did have a copy down here just in case the API didn't respond. So what we have here is we have face 1 is a male with a beard of 0.4, mustache and sideburns. Face 2 is a male, beard, mustache, and sideburns. Not as much of a beard. So we can see that from the 0 to 1 scale, we've got more, definitely got more of a beard here, right? And then when you get to my picture, thankfully I have no beard, mustache, and sideburns. I was really worried that the numbers weren't going to be 0, and it has successfully determined that I'm a female. So, and very, very little lines of code. If you're in Azure, it's maybe 2 clicks to configure your resource, and 6 to 8 lines of code to interact with it, and no machine learning experience or training, or so as far as being able to leverage the technology and being able to have multiple people on your team aware of how to use this technology without having to do too much upskilling and learning. I think it's a great set of tools for us to use, and I'm happy to be sharing them with you. So I think we went through a bunch of stuff. AI demos, Azure Notebooks, and as well as the Cognitive Services APIs. So I think we're talking to a data crowd. So I'm hoping that I've shown you at least one thing that you haven't seen before. And I hope that I've piqued your interest as far as wanting to get in and play with these resources, because as data professionals, we're usually the ones that they ask when they want to start implementing these types of projects. And we shouldn't be fearful of the unknown. It's absolutely projects that we can directly contribute towards and successfully implement. So thank you.
Thank you. And I have a question for you. Have you ever used ML.NET? Because I think it's used as similar stuff, but it works on premise. So do you have any experience or something to say about it?
So I don't spend as much time building the models. I'm more on the application side where we're consuming the models.
Okay, so I have another question. For example, if I have a data science guy and I have preloaded models that I created myself with Python or ML.NET, can I use that models with these services?
Yeah.
For example, you showed a custom vision API and you uploaded pictures, but I want to upload my own model.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
So the custom vision service does let you export models, but not import models, if that makes sense. So you can absolutely export to, there's people who use Onyx and build additions onto there, but you can't import them into custom vision.
Okay, thank you very much, Alicia. This is a very informative and exciting session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we don't have any other questions right now. So thanks for joining us again. And we hope seeing you again in MS Auto Live.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very
Have
much.
a great weekend.
Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you.